Welcome. Today we are here with Casey Maurer and Carey Martin, our brokers from RE/MAX 24/7.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for being here. So to get started, I just want to get a little background on how we got to where we are today. Casey, I know we have, I think you said 40 years of industry experience.
Over 40, 1979.
Whew. And Carey, you're going on how many years now?
This will be my 18th
Wow.
year.
So between all of us, we have at least 80 years of experience here, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you've seen as a broker over your time and working with family? So you guys are related.
Yep.
And how has that challenged you or maybe helped you in your process with your businesses?
Go ahead.
Obviously, two people, we're not nuts and bolts, right? Mm-hmm. We're individuals. And two people may look at the side of the coin, one calling it heads, one calling it tails, and they're looking at the same coin. So because of my fairly deep history in the industry, I'll look at things with details that will remind me of things that haven't worked in the past. So the key for me is to be patient, right? Very patient, because Carey's at a different development stage than I am. I'm very proud of what you've been able to accomplish and how you've grown as a person. So not only am I proud broker owner, I'm a proud father, right? Mm-hmm. In watching that growth take place. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, I have to understand that Carey's growth in many ways outweighs my experience level. Technology. Sure. Think about it, 79, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have fax machines. We didn't have pagers. We didn't have copy machines. Think about all of the changes that I just mentioned, right?
Right.
With Carey, not to mention social media, which now touches us each and every day. And as a good broker and manager, Carey needs to really harness that energy and cause her aging broker father kickingly going along and encouraging it and fostering it. Right? So it's a different thought process.
Okay. And
reaching the same end result.
Right. And Carey, how do you think having your dad involved in your growth and development professionally has helped you and then maybe hindered you maybe at points in your career?
So I'm going to be 100% honest. It has never hindered me, honestly. Because with him being in the business since I was 4, this is real. So he's been in the business since I was 4 years old, and I resisted getting in the business until I was in my early 30s.
Why would you resist that?
Because I saw how hard he worked, and being the child of a successful real estate broker owner of now a few different businesses, few different brokerages, very successful each one. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be available. But then when I look back, he was taking me to all these different things that I got myself involved in high school, middle school, high school, and he was there. But at the time, I thought he was too busy, and I didn't want to be too busy for life. So it took me a little while to get in. But then there's something that kept drawing me into it, probably seeing how well he's done and how he's grown through his career throughout the years. As far as any hindrance, there's never been a hindrance. There's maybe been a little bit of a hindrance when we have to talk through problems, and I have to remember business is business, family is family. And we most definitely try to keep those two things separate, especially when we need to have those really important conversations about business or about family.
Sure. Okay.
Casey,
Yes.
what is the most unbelievable deal that you've had to close in your career?
Wow, with the length of my career, I've had
You've
a lot
had
of
a few,
really
I'm
incredible
sure.
deals. But I can sum it up in you capture the opportunity. The opportunities are all the way around us. And I'll give you an example of only one, and we could talk for virtually hours about just this question. So I had a good friend, or I have a good friend, he's still alive, who informed me that behind his house, he was notified by the town of Clayton that they were going to do a development there. And I said, KC, what do I do? And I said, well, why don't you and I go to the Planning Commission meeting? At the Planning Commission meeting, we learned what was going on. And the name of the subdivision is called The Ridges in the town of Clayton, a fairly upscale subdivision that my former wife and I ended up building a house in. Now, we ended up building a house there because after the Planning Commission meeting, I simply went up to the developer and said, looks like a wonderful, very exciting development. Who are you using as your real estate broker? His answer was, well, we've always sold it ourselves. And I said, you know, there's a few challenges with that. I'd love to sit down and meet with you at your house if you'd like, or an office if you have one, and discuss the challenges and provide you a different thought process. Now, we both know the challenges are, it's against state law. You can only sell so many properties in a year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Big challenge on his part, big liability on his part. Yep. Second of all, he wasn't able to be creative in comparison from a price standpoint, right? 8 subdivisions later with that same developer, where I was the only person involved as the listing agent. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in commission. But more important than that, a good friendship, right? Customer for life, client for life, which led me into the largest transaction that I was ever involved with because he hired me as a buyer's agent.
Oh, wow.
And that led to also sorts of opportunities on that raw land development that I participated in, not just the listing and selling agent. And in one of these situations, no one can afford all of the deals. No one can unless you're a billionaire, right? And he wasn't a billionaire. So we found a large tract of land in the town of Neenah.
Okay.
We now know it as Whitetail Run and Sunset Terrace.
Okay. Yep.
So we located the land, negotiated with the farmer, and the developer couldn't come to the table. So myself and a partner bought an option on that property with full disclosures made to everyone, right? Which then allowed us to own it for 24 hours because we then spent about $20,000 of our own money, not on the option, but on the engineering. So we completely engineered those subdivisions, of which then developers were contacting us to buy the development for a very nice profit. So I only owned it for one day.
Totally worth it though,
Yeah.
right?
Flip my interest off, or our interest off in that development with a master listing contract for all lots in that subdivision at full commission,
Wow.
which was another 3 years of uninterrupted income.
Wow.
So when I say opportunities are all the way around us, I mean opportunities are all the way around us. If I wouldn't have volunteered to go with my friend to the Planning Commission meeting, and if I did not have the fortitude after the Planning Commission meeting to introduce myself to the developer and set an appointment where I could go properly prepared for a presentation to get hired, which then caused a long relationship, which was, I hope, he feels lucrative for him and his family, and I know it was lucrative for mine and my family, which led to a real big deal. And the next day, myself and my partner, each bought 10 houses for cash on a 1031 exchange that I wish I still had today,
Right.
because what I bought them for and what I sold them for, and I thought I was living large. Now these houses in Greenville are selling for 350, 400,000 that I paid $1.10, right?
Wow.
110,
Oh
120
my
grand,
gosh.
right? Right. And Carey, you lived in one of those.
Wow.
So,
That's
and I could fill hours with stories like that in my real estate career.
So, how old were you when you did that with the developer? Like when you went up and
I was
talked to him?
probably in my late 30s, early 40s, maybe.
okay.
That was probably right around 2000, 2001, 1999,
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a fun story of the house, which is really a large house that I built. We had 1,000 truckloads of dirt brought in
Oh my gosh.
because I bought the lowest lot in the subdivision because we had a design that would allow a full 2-story with a complete walkout in the back
Okay.
for a swimming pool and other amenities that
It's
I wanted
beautiful.
to do in that house,
Yeah.
right? So in one of the subdivisions, one of the other subdivisions that the developer was, dirt, for everyone knows it's very expensive to buy and equally expensive to get rid of unless you have a place for it.
Right.
Oh
So
yeah.
I paid for the trucking cost only,
Oh wow.
right? So
That
there's
worked
an
out.
opportunity, right, where you
Sure.
take the lot no one else wanted and you made it one of the nicest lots in the subdivision.
Yeah. Wow.
That's some outside of the box thinking there
Well-
to make it work.
You know, in our training, I do a 9-dot matrix program, asking the agents with one swipe of the pen to do 3 straight lines without lifting their pen out of the paper, connecting all of the dots.
Okay.
The only way you can do that is by thinking outside of the box. And I do that because in real estate, we need to be part of the solution, never part of the problem. There's a lot of people that like to be part of the problem.
Right.
We like to be part of the solution to the problem. And to be part of the solution, often you have to think outside of the box.
Right. And forgive me if this is a story you don't want to share, but I know at one point you had told me that you actually sold a house that wasn't for sale. Can you, is
So
that something you can elaborate
Yeah,
on?
that one was, I was licensed as a broker in September of 1980, got in 79. So very, very young. And unlike today's standards, I didn't have a mentor. I did not have a trainer. Everything was self-taught.
You didn't have a GPS either.
Did not have a GPS,
That's coming.
Oh,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a functional MLS.
right.
Right, myself and 2 other brokers formed the MLS in the local board of realtors. So I hear about this property, I call up, set up an appointment, show what I thought was the property that I called on. It wasn't, it was a neighbor's property to what I showed, and it was a rural situation. In central Wisconsin, almost everyone then left their doors unlocked, the house was vacant, lights were on, doors were open, showed the property. Went through the outbuildings on the property, left my business card on the property, came back to the office, discussed the property, and the buyers really liked it, wanted to tender an offer. So I get a call while I'm writing the offer from the person that owned that property. Said, "We found this card in our kitchen table." I said, "Well, that's my card. You have a beautiful property. It was an honor to show it." Well, and so as it goes on, we formed a relationship over the phone. I submitted an offer. A couple of counter offers later, we get it accepted, and it goes to closing. So instead of hiding, and you had to face that situation head on, and
Yeah.
I was honest.
Yep. It was an honest mistake.
It was an honor to show it,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it. I feel bad for my fellow other broker because that was a no-show on that appointment.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
And of course, I called up and apologized and explained what happened.
So do you think that this is a good example of neighborhood prospecting then? So,
You know, I always said, where you see one sign go up, you'll see another within a short period of time and another within a short period of time in that area. And
Sure enough.
I'm not sure this is the perfect example to amplify this, but it is a true statement.
So that's kind of a outside the box story. And Carey, I know you've had some challenging transactions. Can you share a story where you had to think outside the box to save a deal that maybe at face value to anybody else looks like it's a dead deal? There's no way this is going to close. What did you do, and how did you get it to the closing table?
well, I picked up the phone many times, drank many bottles of wine, and got through negotiations with second, third, and fourth lien holders on a short sale.
Wow.
So short sales, my first listing was a short sale. So what a way to break into the industry, but
Yeah.
to list a short sale, why not?
Right into the fire.
What year was that?
So my first listing was, I believe, in 2009.
That makes sense.
So
That does make sense.
yeah, I started as a licensed admin and then worked into sales. And so I learned very quickly on negotiation skills and record keeping, because you had to record everything. But after many tears on my part, not the lien holders, and getting negotiations underneath my belt, I was able to successfully take a short sale to close. And it was one of my neighbors and one of my friends. So I felt very happy for them that they could get into a short sale situation and not have to go into a full foreclosure, which would have hurt their credit more and make it longer until they could actually purchase another home.
So was there more pressure because it was a neighbor and a friend, or was it the
Easier
same?
to handle.
Not easier to handle, and not necessarily more pressure. Might have been easier to handle to explain to them and set the expectations of what they had to do on their part as well. So anyway, going back to your question about was it easier, not easier, whenever I had a transaction with a friend or somebody who I did know or I do know really well, I try to keep it, going back to the question with my dad, business is business, family's family, friendship is friendship. So one of my neighbors, when we went to list the house, I go over there, I'm dressed as a real estate agent. Afterwards, I go home, change, put my pajamas on, and then go back, and that's when we have wine. But
Got it.
business is business, and we take care of it like that. So because you need to treat it as such, to take some of the raw emotion out of it, especially as a real estate agent, and that's your really good friend or your family. So handling it that way is how we got through it. So wasn't easier, wasn't harder. We just kept it business as usual.
Okay. So Casey, we kind of touched on the 2008 crisis just a little bit. How did you navigate that? How did it affect your business? And what's something that kind of surprises you about how that all went down?
Well, I've had a pretty privileged real estate career. So by 2006, I was an NAR director, sitting on several NAR committees. One of those were conventional financing. at conventional financing, we would have presentations from Fannie, Freddie, HUD, went over all sorts of information. By 2006, we could project what was going to happen in 2008, and I knew it.
Okay.
Also knew that my agents were not going to be prepared to deal with short sales, foreclosures, asset managers, or even get the HUD contract and other items we needed to prosper during that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But knowing that, came across a really good training program, the 5-star program, that really caused my agents to be trained in order to deal and negotiate short sales on behalf of our clients, and introduce to them asset managers. So third-party contracts that manage the assets for the lenders where they foreclosed and took title to the property were many. There are many different companies. The best known are the HUD contracts that, and we have the HUD contract in this office to this day. Not that that's a major part of our business anymore, but at one point in time it was about 40% of our business.
Wow.
Right? So, because I was so involved, I could project what was going to happen and then prepare ourselves through training and education and forming relationships with asset managers to allow our agents to be in the best possible position to negotiate on behalf of those people. Because we have to understand that housing crisis was caused, in my mind, through bad lending practices. And in that scenario, bad things happen to a lot of very good people, right? Where they couldn't refinance because the values went down. And they didn't have the ability financially to come up with the spread. And in some cases, their jobs were endangered, or they had a life-changing sequence that couldn't ride out because they didn't have a long-term mortgage. These were all short-term balloon style mortgage products. So made a lot of really good friends, a lot of very grateful customers and clients to my agents and to me as the broker, right, during that process. But it started with knowledge, and then taking that knowledge and doing something about it to solve future problems. And that's what really good brokers do. Like, we look at the future, what might happen, so that
You're ready.
all of the people in our RE/MAX 24/7 family are able to deal with the challenges in a positive manner.
Okay. So, speaking of that, with that future vision, and this is for both of you, what do you see coming down the pike here? I mean, are we on the brink of another housing crisis?
Well, I'll let you take a stab at that. I have my own opinion.
I don't think we're on the brink of a housing crisis, because policies are being put in place to help make building more affordable for builders, or the state of Wisconsin is working on it currently. There's several bills on the table right now to help get some money that Governor Evers had allocated towards these different types of projects to get out, and we're working towards making it a little bit easier for that money to go into the hands of these people. So right now we obviously are in a housing shortage. We are 140,000 units behind by 2030. That's how many have to be built in order for us to get caught up, which is quite a few. And so the Realtors Association is working hard to help get money back out into those hands for those new units to be built. There's been so many different policies put in place now for lending rules that I don't think that we're going to fall into a lending crisis like we did in 2008, start of 2008. The Frank Dodd rule was put in place at that point in time, so that has really helped now over the years and stuff. So I don't think that we are going to be
The third
where
party
we were.
appraisers help a lot too.
The way?
Third-party appraisers, where you're not just like calling on your friend, the appraiser, to go out
Oh,
and make
yeah.
sure that it matches the purchase price.
Yes, yeah, yeah. There's strict rules with the appraisers now. So I firmly don't believe that we're going to get back to where we were in 2008. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have a lot of people that ask me when this whole housing shortage is going to end. And I keep telling everybody that I just read a statistic not too long ago that there are 4 million people living in apartments that make over $100,000 a year. But they have no house to buy.
Yep.
Because there's such a shortage. So the demand is there, but we're just waiting for people to get sick of having those low interest rates, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and there's several things happening, and I'm an example of that, right? At 72 years of age, I'm a baby boomer, right? For most of us in my age zone, the house is either paid for or they have a 2 or 3 or 3.5% loan on the property. But they're aging out, right? So every year, at least one of my friends who has this wonderful 2-story colonial style home that they've lived in and they've raised their family, and it's probably 3,000 square feet and they need probably 1,000 square feet, can't come to terms with selling it because what they're going to buy is probably fairly close to what they're selling in value, only they're getting a half or a third of the house. Okay. But at some point in time, we're not going to be able to do steps. We don't want to shovel the sidewalk or the driveway or mow the lawn, right? So a lot of the real estate that would have been spun and put on the market has not been because of building costs going up and interest rates going up, the combination of the two. But at some point in time, the price really doesn't matter to the baby boomers because it's not going to change their lifestyle,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
it might change the heirs to their lifestyle,
Right.
right? So at some point in time, things will start to even up. During my real estate career, I broke in when housing units actually hit 21% for the builders. Okay, think about that.
It's like buying a house on a
And guess
credit card.
what?
Okay.
I prospered. In 1981, I had 52 closings as a real estate agent.
Wow.
Wow.
Think about that given that interest rate.
And that's in central Wisconsin. That
Very
wasn't even in a big market.
Yeah, that's a very small market,
Wow.
right? I think the average sales price back then was
Like
like
rapids.
40 grand or something,
Wow.
right? Okay. But it was all relative,
Right.
right? Because I could buy a new car for 6 or 7 grand, right?
Yeah.
Now I can't buy a truck for 6 or 7 grand. I'm probably in at 70, 80, 90 grand,
Yep.
right? So it's all relative
Sure.
to what's going on. So that will help correct the market. Also, appreciation will not continue at double digits. It will continue, but not at double digits. And it won't continue at double digits because housing affordability will start to become in question, right? Right now, houses are still affordable for the majority of the residents in Wisconsin, right? But I just ran a report where that $250,000 house 4 years ago is closing in at $400,000 today. So the buyer that chose not to buy 4 years ago could have, but didn't want to be part of the hustle. And then interest rates started increasing, right?
Yep.
I guarantee you that they didn't save $100,000 or $150,000 in the last 4 years.
No way.
So the money that I hope they did save, but they have a different sticker shock. So during my real estate career, I've seen many lows and many highs. Many people don't understand that real estate is not static or constantly increasing. It goes up and down.
It's a cycle.
But always, the cycle when it's down, when it goes up, it's higher than the higher point than it was than when it went down. Right? That's history.
So it's still going to keep eventually.
Yes,
Going up.
you become a winner.
Yep.
Up and
Become a
down, but
win-
always up.
You
Yeah.
become a
Yeah.
winner.
Just like the stock market.
And
How much was the first house you bought for the interest rate on it?
first house that I bought, I paid 18%.
Jeez. Mine was almost 8. So what was the year?
Oh gosh, I already owned it by the time I got into real estate, so I probably 77, 78,
Okay.
something like that.
Mine was almost 8% in 1997.
And by the way, that was on a land contract. I didn't have a down payment.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was a converted gas station that I paid $8,600 for. That I thought I was really doing something special because I sold it. I was close to the hospital. Sold it to the hospital for $35,000, and I thought, boy, I'm the smartest real estate genius known to mankind, making that kind of money at that age on a flip.
That's a good return on investment, though.
I think that house is still standing there, too. Isn't it? That little
Yeah.
house? Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a gas station?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Going in Denmark.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So how about you guys?
So I kind of cheated. So I bought my first house at 22 years old, and I worked for a bank in Oshkosh, and they had a special interest rate for workers, for employees. So my interest rate was 3.75 when regular rates were at right about 7. It was the cost of funds.
Holy
Nice.
So
smokes. Good.
the realtor that I was working with to buy the house didn't believe me. So I actually had to get a letter from the bank stating that it was 3.75.
Yeah.
Because that
and-
wasn't standard back then.
No, not at all. And then
I mean, that was only a few years ago, right?
that was in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a little bit ago. I was actually born the year Casey started in the business. Anyway,
Don't I feel young for it?
yeah. So I can remember though when I signed papers to purchase the house, my boss was like, "I got you now for 30 years. Got that 3.75 interest rate." I'm like, "Oh, okay, boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, maybe not."
Yeah.
And mine was 12 years ago. In a similar situation, I was a bank employee, and I didn't get that kind of a sweetheart deal. I think by the time I was in the industry, they had probably had different rules and regulations compared to when you were.
Because you're so much younger than me.
Pretty much. So I think we were right around 4%. But then being in the industry, kind of in title, we'd see all the closing documents. You always knew kind of where interest rates always were at all the different lenders. So we jumped on a chance to refinance. Like Casey was saying, it's super easy. And so, yeah, we're kind of part of that group of people who I feel like I'm somewhat locked into my interest rate. I'm at a point where I'm at right about 3%. And so for me, it's hard for me to justify 7%. So I do see where some people are coming from when they're in that rate at such a low cost, and then you see where that money gets you.
Yeah,
Isn't
the
the
challenge is we have to react to lifestyle choices.
Right.
Right? And lifestyle isn't always dictated by our desires. Sometimes it's dictated by things outside of our control. Job relocations, right sizing with companies or corporations, family size changes, right? Promotions.
Right.
Your need to have a home to entertain people versus being entertained at someone else's home, right?
That's
so
true.
there's all sorts of reasons why you buy and all sorts of reasons why you sell. But when it comes to the future, I mean, take a look at the key performance indicators. Inflation is almost under control. employment is extremely good, wage growth is up, right? And it's not coming from the government sector now, it's coming from the private sector, which is where most people want income
Right.
and wages to grow from.
Yeah.
So some of the real serious numbers that people, economists look at, there's a lot of reasons to say that cup is half full.
Right. And I think that's, something that we see a lot in this industry where people are just they're waiting. This interest rate is so high, which again, I'm a person who my house still fits my needs and I love my community where I'm at. I don't have a need at the moment to move. But there are a lot of people that we talk to who have added another family member, a new kid to the family or something, and they're really close and they're really tight, but they just can't get over that interest rate, and then they're worrying about, is there going to be that drop in real estate prices? Now, you said you don't foresee the continuation of double-digit increases.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, Outagamie, Winnebago, Calumet County, our world, because all real estate is local, right? So it doesn't matter what's happening in Las Vegas or California.
Right.
It's interesting and it's part of the big picture. And God, there's plenty of economic surveys taken about the big picture. And in all of those surveys, not one Wisconsin community is part of that statistic. So that's the first thing you need to know. So when you see reports in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's not talking about what's happening in our back door. And that's really what's important. And if you take a look at it, traditionally our appreciation rate on homes have been anywhere from 2.5% to 4%. And right in line with wage growth.
Sure.
Right in line in wage growth. And most recently, we're at 8 to 12% depending upon price range sector, right?
Yep.
And if you take a look at it further, so for every 1% increase, $100,000 mortgage, you pay what extra per year? Would that be $1,000? 1% of 100,000 is how much?
We're agents. We need calculators.
No, it's a grand.
Yep.
So, a
Where's my phone?
$300,000 mortgage, and you're paying 3% more than your neighbor.
Yep.
You're paying $9,000 extra per year. That house went up $100,000. So when I say just do the math, and then throw in the tax deductibility of interest rate, right, versus rental. Lifestyle choices, having pets, having children, doing swing sets if you have children, painting room colors, etc., etc., etc. It really is the American dream. Home ownership is very special in the United States. We have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Can't get that in England. Can't get that in Canada. Think about that.
Yeah.
So I read something recently too that with all these people waiting until the interest rates come down, if the people in 1980 would have waited, they wouldn't have purchased a house until like 1993.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and
a long time.
remember, what goes up will come down, right? The question
Hopefully.
is, will the prices come down in my lifetime? Certainly they will. They've came down many times in my lifetime. But they've always went up, and where they went up is higher than the highest point before it went down.
Yep.
Okay, so if you're waiting for that magical moment, let's say it's the buyer that waited. They could have bought 4 years ago, and now they're going to pay an extra 150 grand for the house. And they're right. The prices went down by 100,000. they're still 50 grand upside down.
Yep.
Now, to me, that's not chicken feed,
Right.
right? It's hard for most people to save $50,000 in 4 years. Hard, very hard. Matter of fact, it normally doesn't happen. There's a reason why the greatest wealth in this country is being held in real estate. And that's because we have the ability to pay down debt, right? So loan goes down, home values go up, it appreciates, and underneath current tax code, we can write certain expenses off.
Right.
Might be a better bet than the stock market.
No kidding. You never know.
Yeah.
Today it's doing great.
I was
though.
gonna say
Oh.
Bitcoin's up.
Well, that's good. I still think that real estate's probably a more safe bet though. So
Oh, absolutely.
Well, you
There's
have
one
more-
thing they're not making more of.
You
Right.
have
Land.
more control, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't live in the stock market.
No.
We all need to live someplace,
Right.
yep,
So
other
where
than
you?
maybe our children that are living at home yet.
that's not me.
Okay.
No,
You
that's
do
not
have
me.
children at home though.
Yes, in their 20s. Although they're still in school, so it's okay for
Okay,
now.
okay.
For now.
Okay, so moving on to a little bit lighter subject. What is the funniest thing that has happened to either one of you at an open house?
What, an open house?
Yeah. Or a showing, I should say. Either or.
Put your paper down.
How creative buyers, sellers, and other real estate agents can be when they look at a room or a house, right? When I say is the cup half full or half empty, it's all based on the eyes, the vision you're looking through to answer that question. And the creativity is endless. I mean, I've said so many times in my life, you can't make this up. You have to live it. You just can't make it up. And if I tell the story, it's probably not going to be believed because it's so far-fetched.
Let's hear one. You got one?
How about the water frontage, because it was on a drainage ditch?
So at the high tide,
How
it was
about-
navigable.
Had it,
The
had it
basement
rained
has
recently?
moisture, when in essence, during the spring of the year, it's a small river coming through the wall,
Some moisture.
right? How about the fireplaces that don't work but have a flame on in the pictures because of our ability to Photoshop now, photos, amplifying
Oh,
rooms,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? I mean, the list is so long of creativity. Most of the time for creativity, but sometimes for amplification. And it's the amplification where it stops being funny because someone's going to get hurt,
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why we hope the buyers and sellers use a realtor. And we hope that they use us, but if they don't use us, that they use someone that's a professional in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
Your example,
have
Carey.
one?
You
Oh,
got
I
one?
can't tell these. You guys already know these.
They don't.
I could tell you a time that I was freaked out though.
Okay.
So, and realtor safety is huge, right?
Yeah.
So, and as a realtor, especially a female, because we're more often targeted than men, just in general. Had an open house. House was a vacant house, cute little house, and a pretty busy open house. The gentleman came to the beginning of the open house, stayed throughout the entire open house, but lingered around outside. It was super weird. I felt uncomfortable. Like I got that vibe, like the spidey sense was going off. So at the very end, there was a younger couple that was still there, and I actually asked him. I said, "You know what? That I just don't have the right vibe with this. Do you guys mind staying while I go check the whole house, make sure everything is secured and lock up?" And I told them why, and they said, "Hands down, absolutely, we will stay here and make sure nobody else comes in." Meaning this gentleman that was kind of hanging around. And then I walked out with them and got into my car right away, and a guy got the hint. But it was a weird experience, and I know that there was other experiences that actually happened here in Appleton, where people are approached at open houses with inappropriate comments or potential inappropriate, shoulder taps or whatever. And so the safety of it all and not being afraid to ask someone or, instead of putting myself in that situation was key. But that was one of the situations that will always stick out to me in my mind, in making sure that you're safe when you're doing these types of things. So that was one situation.
So I'm obviously newer into the industry, and I'm at a point where I do get very emotionally invested for my clients. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. But can you guys talk about a time that maybe you were super emotionally invested, maybe one of the more emotional transactions that you had to deal with, how it went down and the whole situation?
Well, mine was just with my friends who were put in a tough situation that they ended up having to sell as a short sale. And
So your very first one.
yeah, my very first one. And actually, I ended up selling 3 friends' houses that ended up in a short sale.
Wow.
So yeah, and this was early on in my career. So that's when a lot of short sales came about. I've probably done about a 6 to 8, I can't remember, short sales over my career early on. And then, but anyway, it can be very hard and emotional because they don't always understand why this is happening to them when they've done everything that they were supposed to do. And the rules and regulations that were put in place with some of the lending institutions and stuff, the changes didn't come around fast enough for these people to affect them to be able to stay in their homes and get some refinancing help and things like that. And so unfortunately, that came after many of these short sales took place. But and it was emotionally taxing. And how do you not get emotional when it's one of your really good friends, So.
Okay.
Having empathy for your clients and customers are really, really important. They don't want to deal with an unfeelingful block of concrete,
Right.
right? However, we also have to be professionals. Think about our ability to take the people that had bad things happen to them, and they're good people, and be able to help them through a process so that they can come out the other end with grace and dignity. That's really important. Our job is so much easier than a surgeon who has to report to the family that one of their loved ones, the doctor, wasn't successful and one of their loved ones is no longer alive. Often we're involved with estates, but we're not the one notifying anyone of that.
Yeah.
That notwithstanding, it is, people have trauma. Good people have trauma. Unexpected divorce, unexpected job termination, unexpected health issues, right? And the list is long of negative things that happen to good people where we get involved in the transaction at some part of that. How about that first-time home buyer that gave notice to their landlord, satisfied all the contingencies in the offer to purchase, seller has a moving truck, and oops, final underwriting comes up, finds a glitch, and the transaction doesn't close. Now we have a seller who is counting on the money to move on with their life. We have a buyer who doesn't have an umbrella. They've given notice. They have to be out of their house that maybe that weekend, maybe that day, right? So, and those are really not major items, but they are traumatic items for our customers and clients on both ends of the scale. But I can tell you, and I mean this deeply, there's nothing more gratifying to me, and you've heard me say this before, to be part of the solution. So instead of pointing fingers at different people or things, let's find out how we can solve the problem. Maybe it's assisting that buyer in finding a short-term rental, right?
Yep.
Maybe it's assisting that seller in buying time on the contract and the house they were going to purchase, right? But there's almost always a solution to every problem, providing we can step back far enough where we don't lose our empathy, but we're not so empathetic that we have blinders on to other possible solutions.
Okay, like that. Shifting gears just a little bit, what would you tell somebody who is looking at getting into real estate? You know, they've seen it happen. They've seen a friend maybe get into real estate and they've been successful, and they're on the edge about making the jump. There's a ton of uncertainty in changing a career, potentially going from a 9 to 5 to a midnight to midnight.
24/7. We here at Remax do it 24/7.
Call these guys.
So somebody who really wants to get in, what's some advice that you would give to that person who's on the fence?
So something I always tell everybody that I meet with that is thinking about getting into real estate. I say, do the schooling, get your license, place it with the state of Wisconsin, get that fire, and then make a choice. Because if you're licensed in the state of Wisconsin, you can legally get a referral paid to you if you have a good standing license with the state. So that way, the investment that you've made in your learning and deciding what you want to do, you can make a little bit of money on the other side of it. So if you have a friend that refers business to you, you say, sure, I'll pay you a referral as long as your license is a good standing. Then you can do that. And from there, then people start to get the itch and they want to get into it and at least try it. When we talk to people, we're 100% honest with them. We say, this is what it's going to take to get into the business. Mm-hmm. This is what it's going to take to get into the business here at our firm. And then we evaluate them to see how motivated they are. Do they like it just because they watch HGTV? Or are they a hustler and they really get out and do the grind and they're going to, that they really want to focus on real estate, that this is what they want to do for a career. So that's how we kind of evaluate how the conversations go and which way to lead people, but more so on their motivation and stuff. So, or that's what I do anyway.
Right.
While many things have changed during my real estate career, there's many things that haven't. Like, you can't try real estate.
Right.
You're either in
Or
you're not.
It's an expensive hobby.
Right.
Right.
If you're in it, and I have to tell you, way back when I got licensed, I went to the Wisconsin School of Real Estate. It was the only one in Wisconsin, housed in the basement of a Milwaukee hotel downtown. Milwaukee. True story.
sounds legit.
True story. And the instructor, who I later hired, by the way, started a real estate school of my own. His name was Chuck. So Chuck was a short man by stature, tall man in attitude and his ability to teach. So Chuck on the first day had us all go around, introduce ourselves and say why we're wanting to get into real estate. And here's this cocky K.C. Maurer who stands up. I'm K.C. Maurer and I want to make a lot of money. Chuck came up at first break, tapped me on the shoulder and said, K.C., thank you for your honesty. But I want to tell you, there's a lot of ways to make a lot of money in life. And if that's why you want to get in real estate, you're probably in the wrong career. The wrong career. And you know what? Very shortly after that, when I was actually practicing real estate, I really started to understand what he was saying, right? Which is, we have to care about people more than money. And if we do our job correctly, finding out what their needs are, buyers or sellers, and then answering or being part of answering their needs, we might make bushel baskets of money.
Right.
But if we go in thinking about the money, without thinking about their needs or making their needs secondary, you'll never be in it to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And I've also seen during my real estate career the agents that have a little financial issue. It's very difficult for them to get to a real estate closing. Things blow up. I don't know why. I don't know if the buyer or the seller has just simply a sick sense and they feel it, or the agent presses too hard, right?
Sure.
No one wants to be sold, everyone wants to buy,
Right.
right? So there's that process. So caring about people is really the magical ingredient to being successful in real estate, and then actually doing it, not talking it. There's this old saying, do you talk your walk or walk your talk? It's different.
Right.
So don't tell me what you're going to do. Show me what you're going to do, and then actually do it repetitively. Right? Not one and done. This isn't a one and done business.
Right.
I love Jared James when he says, be the most boring person in the room because you're so scheduled, you know, that you're doing the
Routines.
activities, every day to maintain that success and stuff too. But then you're not taking the human element out of it either. And you're
Yeah.
caring about your clients and you're caring about their needs and what needs to happen for them in real estate.
So, what would you say that you have? What was a big mistake that you made over the years that was a huge lesson for you that you have carried through?
Tell you the
Smart.
biggest mistake I made, I just told you about it. I got into the business on purpose for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
And I had to learn very quickly when I thought, oh my God, Casey Maurer was the hottest guy in town. Everyone should be doing business with him. I had to learn a little humility.
Should have seen his
Become
boots and bell bottoms.
Humble, right?
Imagine.
Do you have a picture?
Right?
Probably.
You
That
should submit it. I'll put it
I
in here.
better start learning. And truly, I had to learn. Now, it's not that I wasn't empathetic and it wasn't that I didn't care, but that wasn't my primary motive. I had to shift my little thick brain hitting both sides of my skull, my thought process.
Okay.
What was the color of your first leisure suit that you bought to wear in real estate?
Green.
That was green.
Oh.
I was thinking maybe powder blue,
Money.
but oh, what shade of green? Like this shade or
No,
like
more like celery.
Well, that's.
I got to keep
different.
in mind my age and the leisure suit concept and that whole lapel that was this wide type thing.
the bottoms of the pants sweeping
Yeah, the
floors.
Can't see the shoes underneath.
But they were spot on though.
Hey, at least you didn't
Throwing
have to
a
bring a rake to rake up the shag carpet when you were doing an open house.
Oh my.
Vacuum lines be damned, you just use a rake instead. Oh my gosh.
So
That's funny.
That's awesome.
that's a trend that has not come back. We say it's
Yuck.
cyclical.
Yuck.
Yes, it's
Yuck.
cyclical.
Oh
Well,
my
it kind
God.
of did. They had shag carpet for like smaller shag,
Yeah.
but not quite so bad.
How about the beautiful shade of avocado appliances and gold
Those are
and
coming back
yellow
though a little bit. They were
appliances?
trying to push its way back in for the mid-century modern
Right.
with some of that stuff, I think. So
So what's a trend? I mean, I think we talk about I hear people talk about the good old days and how things used to be. I understand that there are a lot of things in the past that were maybe perceived to be better. But what's one thing that's changed in the industry that you can point your finger at and go, we are so much better because of this change?
social media and internet.
From a sales standpoint, yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
From the housing, the construction qualities have went up significantly.
Interesting.
The design appeal has changed dramatically. So when I got into the business, We used to call them the World War II story and a half style homes that would come, they'd get their VA loan, the first floor would be finished off, the second floor would not be finished off, but as the family grew, they could finish off that second story, and we call them story and a half, right? Then that went into split by tri and quad level designs, which all contained a bunch of steps,
Yep.
but inexpensive square footage. Then we went into 2 stories, right? Less expensive square footage, because building up is less expensive than building
Less
on.
footprint.
Then we go into today's pattern, 1-story homes with split bedrooms. Now the reason why the bedrooms are split is to make the rooms bigger, to eliminate hallways. So you get more living space for the same square foot, right? Some people think it's for privacy, mom and dad's bedroom on one side, the kids' bedrooms on the other
Sure.
side, but that's not where the concept started. So energy efficiency, right? My first house had a coal-fired furnace. Then I gravitated all the way up to an oil-fired furnace. Then I gravitated to natural gas, right? Right? Electric, etc. So,
And now you're
housing-
geothermal.
yeah, that's right. Now I have geothermal. So now so the standards have changed, and so have what the people wanted, right? When I grew up, if you had anything of significance in a house, you had a formal dining room. Now what do we need? An office,
Yep.
right? Because families traditionally don't use formal dining rooms, but they need the space. They need a space,
Right.
right?
I use it as a plant room.
I heard. So I can remember when I first started just a few years ago, someone told me, like, when you're doing comparables, that houses built, I think after 1985 were built significantly different than houses built prior to 1985. Is that
Well, I don't know that with
Okay.
100% accuracy, but I believe that to be true,
okay?
right? Building codes changed,
Right.
energy efficiency changed,
Okay.
appliance efficiency changed,
Okay.
right?
That makes sense.
So
And that was
a
right
lot
about
of
the time
things
that all that
have
happened.
changed, right?
Okay.
To make the house more affordable when you're living in the house or getting more house for the money,
Okay.
right? So, and now we all know that many first-time buyers want homes to be really finished off in a very nice quality level. When I got into the business, almost all first-time home buyers were looking to do fixer-uppers,
Yep.
right? Create sweat equity.
Yep.
Nobody wants to do that anymore.
Well, not many. There's still a few, but yeah, the buying standards have changed,
Yeah.
Right.
right? And that's part of the reason why homes are more expensive now, right? Because they're built with a different standard.
Right. Well, and we all, yeah, like you said, we all have different expectations now. Those first-time home buyers have a different expectation. They may be willing to take less square footage, but they want a finished home. They don't want to put in that same sweat equity, and that's not everyone, but it seems like the trend. So we've talked about some of the changes that have happened in the industry, and I think we got to address, the big change that was public in the news all over, the settlement, the NAR settlement. So I just want to get what your input is and how you think it's affected the industry, and the changes that you guys have seen, for better, for worse, and what it really means for all of our clients.
So, I mean, he'll speak to this better than I can, but Wisconsin has been very transparent over many, many years and a leader in their forms one of the leaders in buyer agencies since the 90s, I believe we've had buyer agency. And so there's just a shift in how we use buyer representation in Wisconsin, and the thought process. There was a lot of fires in people's brains thinking that there was going to be this gigantic shift for Wisconsinites and agents. Although it really wasn't a whole lot different than the way we were practicing before. There were just some other things put in place to check more boxes. And that's kind of it. Although, of course, there's more transparency, although I believe a lot of us here, and you've taught many agents and throughout the years and ingrained in a lot of us here, that the conversations about commissions and about true transparencies with our clients and customers is extremely important. And so for me, I don't feel like there's a huge change, but I know that there was a lot of panic, and especially so much panic put on social media that it put many agents into a tailspin. But I don't perceive it as a huge shift for Wisconsin and Wisconsin agents, because we were really practicing very competently before and just checking a few more boxes now.
I think Jared James said it best, actually, where you can explain it as just a change in accounting.
Yeah,
Like-
kind of.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Let's face it, we are part of an industry that hates change, even though change is constant, right? But as realtors, we don't really like to have a lot of change in our life. We get set in our business
We
practice.
have our spiels.
Yes, our spiel.
Shtick.
But I believe what Carey said is accurate. In Wisconsin, we were very, very fortunate to have buyer agency. Our listing contract for a number of years already said to the seller, look, we're going to charge X, and with your permission, we will offer Y to any agent that brings in a buyer. Right? We said that. So there was a change of a fear of us on the selling side and on the listing side, what our sellers or buyers would think about that. But at the end of the day, I have not observed, since the law has been changed or the settlement entered into, a significant change from buyers or sellers, in spite of the huge publicity that was put out. That notwithstanding, I have, because of my lengthy exposure to the National Association of Realtors, many fellow brokers in different states where they did not have buyer agency. And the settlement agreement caused them to now practice buyer agency. And for those people, it was very dramatic alike. It was very dramatic to me when buyer agency came in, because when I got into the business, we owed 100% dedication, skill, and care to the seller, period. End of conversation. I don't care if it was my sister buying the house, my mother buying the house,
Wow.
right? We owed it to the seller. And that was administrative code in Wisconsin. As we transformed to that into seller agency, buyer agency, then several different spin-offs of the laws of agency, right? Multiple representation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That then caused an adjustment for us old timers, because we were taught one way. And this was a major change. So I remember that adjustment, right? That we had to adjust our thought process. But change is constant, right? It's constant. And sure as I'm sitting in this chair today, if you ask me that same question next year, there'll be something new that's changed in either the marketing arm, the consumer arm, the state statute arm, the contractual arm. Change is constant. And those people that don't change are challenged to stay in the business.
So you've had to adapt over the years multiple times for so many different changes. Today, every day, I hop on my computer and I pull up the multiple listing service and look at all the new listings and see what we got in the area. I imagine without computers and technology, back in the day, that obviously wasn't an option. So how did you operate as a broker or realtor to find these listings and let your clients know what was available?
I can tell you there's so many funny
It
stories.
goes back to his first story.
So
He
many
just showed the
funny
wrong house.
stories. Right? As the brokers, we would used to get together once a week for breakfast and swap pieces of paper.
Oh, wow.
And the problem with that, by the time you left the meeting, the paper was obsolete because a sale happened or a new listing happened. So while we use that as a resource, we used to have to get in our cars and drive up and down the streets looking for signs.
Wow. So he used
True
to.
story. True story. And to make it worse, where were the keys? The keys were in the real estate broker's offices. So every showing, you had to go to the office, check out the key. And most brokers had a rule that no later than an hour later, that key had to be returned to the office or you wouldn't get access to any more keys from that company.
Wow.
Right?
Do you know, in my career, I actually had to do that once in Shawano. As you're mentioning that, I forgot. I actually had to go to a real estate office in Shawano, pick up the key, and show it. And now, granted, we have lock boxes and everything else, so they still were running it old school.
Yeah, I mean,
And out
so
there-
many things have changed now, from
I'm gonna
mechanical
start doing
lock boxes to electronic lock boxes, to starting with no lock boxes, to MLSs, three-ring binders with pieces of papers that the brokers would trade, to the MLS providing a bound paper book with rules that you can't show that book to anyone.
Wow.
To now, and that was a rule.
It's
Pretty
not a
big
copycat
fine
book.
if you showed that MLS book or gave it to a customer, a buyer, or a seller.
Wow.
And then how that changed to us actually getting that bound book was sold in closed comps every 3 months. And that was better than every 6 months that we used to get the book.
Right.
To now, we give out the information to everyone right away. All of the agents have it right away.
Yep.
We have a collaboration center and we give it to our buyers and sellers virtually right away. Right? Whole different thought process. My story, my favorite story is one of my attorneys happened to be a former judge. And his first name is Frank. And Frank is a very knowledgeable senior attorney. And back then the attorneys loved the realtors because they would do opinions of title by getting the abstract, reading the abstract, then giving their written report on their thought about the chain of title, right? So I have a transaction, call Frank up. Frank, I'm so happy. We just bought a fax machine. I can fax it to you. And him saying to me over the phone, and this is almost an exact quote, KC, we will never have a fax machine. No one should ever be forced to make a decision fast enough that would require a fax.
Oh my gosh.
Now think about that. Think about that. A judge, a senior member of the law profession, making that statement to a realtor that is giving them business,
Yeah.
right? And to where we are today.
No fax.
Yeah.
We still have a
E-fax,
machine,
right?
but yeah.
Yeah.
And not that long ago, when I opened up this real estate company, Remax 24/7, we had 3 fax machines.
And they were going all day long,
Yep.
weren't they?
One,
Oh, yeah.
one incoming fax machine and 2 outgoing fax machines because we were having bottlenecks.
Wow.
Could you imagine faxing an amendment with the home inspection?
Gosh.
So the transmission or to receive something like that took sometimes up to like an hour because it was such a large file.
And
Yeah.
dial up, I
To
mean.
eat. Well, yeah.
Yeah, now we're so spoiled, we go to the copy machine, which is also a scanner, hit send, and it's gone
Yeah.
Yeah. So
within microseconds, right?
one of my early childhood memories of him living in central Wisconsin with his company was they would have a booth at the fair in the barn, and they would put Polaroids up on a board of all the houses that they had available for sale. And then their booth would always be busy because they didn't have all these other technologies that we have nowadays and the internet and everything else. So people would be flocking to see what houses were for sale and stuff. It was just incredible.
Wow.
So I mean, we were pretty lucky because if we were supposed to be with Dad was busy, so we might sneak off to go on the rides and try to find cotton candy and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a good time. So that's, I mean, technology has come a long ways. Remember when you first opened in MySpace, you know, a lot of people had MySpace, and I said to him, I'm like, put the houses on MySpace. And I didn't think, well, why can't you? Because he's like, no, we can't. Because there was certain rules and regulations that I didn't understand at first because I was just licensed and an admin. And now understand it because there's a lot of things that had to happen to be put in place. But could you imagine not putting the houses for sale on social media unless your sellers just absolutely don't want them?
No.
So
And what seller would not want them?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So unless there's any celebrities within which we will take celebrities too.
Packer
Yes.
players. Yep.
Whatever. That's fine.
I can tell you, would you like a question off, an answer off the,
Yes.
Absolutely.
so you didn't ask me what my biggest fear is in the future.
What is your biggest
I already
fear?
know that he won't be here anymore. Yeah, that'll make him go to a retirement
Now,
home.
my biggest fear is, my biggest love is technology. My greatest fear is technology because the agents are allowing technology to replace them. And I'll tell you what I mean. When I got into the business, if you did a good job, you could count on an 80% referral rate out of your past customers and clients. Why? Because you always had to meet with them. You had no other technology but to meet with them. Now, what happened when you met with them? Each meeting, you formed a stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger bond, right? Now, our clients don't really want to meet with us. They want us to, I'm not sure they even want to text us anymore. Right? They're getting so distant, so removed. So our relationship is changing from making a personal bonding relationship to one that's technology driven, right? And I've seen just during my real estate careers that the past customer and client referral business has went down to about 30% from 80% to 30%. And it's not because the agents did a better job way back in the 80s than what they do now, or that the agents did a worse job now. That's not the reason. The reason is we're allowing technology to change the relationship.
I could see that.
Yeah.
The relationship. Now we email a monthly newsletter, or we mail a calendar, or we mail a postcard, right? That's one of our points of contact. Where, you know, before we used to look for excuses to drop off pumpkins on Halloween, turkeys during Thanksgiving, fruit baskets are something for Christmas, right? Yes, right. We would do stuff to get in their face
Stay there.
intentionally,
Yeah.
intentionally, right? So technology has made it easier. So now we can contact 5,000 people in the length of time it took us to contact 5 people,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So that's the benefit. The drawback is those 5 people, 4 of them give me business today, I don't know if 4 out of the 5,000 will give me business, right? I
Yeah.
hope they will, but it's a whole different item. And as a career realtor, I know the first sale is the bread and butter. It's the referrals or the ancillary transaction from that first that allows you to eat steak and lobster.
I love
Instead of
that.
ramen.
Yeah.
Right? It's a real
like ramen.
difference. So we cannot be in the career long enough just to make first impressions. Our income will always go like this if we do that. We'll never have
Sure.
consistency.
Yep.
So that's really my greatest fear. So my greatest love is technology right now. And I mean that. Even at 72 years of age, I love technology. I'm not good at it, but I love it. My biggest fear is that's replaced a lot of the personal dynamics that made our profession really a career.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Have you sold a house without meeting your person until closing?
No. Well, I did as a mortgage lender a lot.
Really?
A lot. Yeah. I would meet them for the first time at closing.
So
But here, not so much.
I sold a house once that I didn't meet the buyer until her final walkthrough, and then closing. Our final walkthrough was right before closing, but she lived in southern Wisconsin, and there was reasons. Although one of her daughters lived up here, and so her daughter would go, and then we just do a virtual showing and stuff. But that was the first time I ever did that, and that was a little hard to adapt to. And then I had a seller too. They lived in New York, and they had to sell a house here, and I never once met them in person. So it was kind of crazy. But
Wow.
yeah, it was, and they were legit. They were
Yep.
totally legit,
was
but
gonna say,
it
yep.
wasn't one of these AI scams. So yeah.
It's fascinating to me because, as you know, I just had a birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a text from my dentist congratulating me, wishing me a happy birthday. Got many from past customers and clients and family and friends, right? But one from the car salesman, one from the insurance agent, one from the title company, lots of them from lenders. But one lender gave me a call and said, Casey, happy birthday. Let's go out for cocktails. You named a day last week. Which one am I going to give business to?
The one that called you.
Well,
Of
it
course.
took the time to call me, right?
Right.
And it's not because I need a free glass of whiskey,
Right.
right? That's not why.
It's more
Sure.
personal. Yeah.
It's because I appreciate relationships.
Yeah. That makes a big difference. It goes a long ways. You know, whether old school or new school, I think people just appreciate that you're thinking of them, you're giving them that extra just something as compared to just clicking send, you know.
Yeah. If I see that someone on my Facebook friends list has a birthday and I have that friend in my phone, I would rather reach out to them that way rather than through the Facebook, because
Yeah.
so many, I mean, it's already pre-written for you. Even when
Yeah,
you go in to
yeah,
wish me
now
happy
it's-
birthday,
Yep.
you just hit send. Yep, happy birthday. I don't know you.
I'm gonna be honest. I love that feature. It makes it so much easier. I'm sorry, you guys, but yeah, it kind
It
of
is nice,
does. But I do that though too. So the extra special people, I may send them a private message or a text.
Yeah.
And what Carey just said is what scares the big jeebus out of me. It's so much easier. It's so much faster.
Yep.
But did it leave a lasting positive impression? Lasting. It left a positive impression. Oh, Carey said happy birthday, and there was a balloon and a smiley face or whatever they had.
Cup
Yeah.
of coffee.
Birthday cake,
Why did they do that?
right? But I'm always worried about cause and effect. What's the consequences? What's the impact?
Yep. So we want to be considerate of your time too. We've been here for a while, so thank you very much.
You're
But I
welcome.
do have one last question for you.
For me or Carey?
You,
Oh, great.
why did you choose Remax?
Well, I took about 6 months off. As you know, I owned a number of different real estate companies, and my last one before this was Century 21, which is still doing wonderful. My other daughter and her mother own that company. And it was interesting. So Dawn ended up with that company, and she said to me, Casey, you've started many companies. You can start another company. I can't. I'm a rock star agent. I know how to sell. I can sell everything. But trading, it's a little different, right? So she won the bidding war, right? And then I took several months off and interviewed every franchise known to mankind, including for sale by owner style franchises.
Okay.
When I said I'm going to take it as a clean slate, I meant it, because I didn't know. Remind you, you know me, I think I'm fairly knowledgeable and I know what to do, so I didn't know. I thought maybe I'd open up Maurer real estate.
Okay. Like a boutique one?
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
right? So I took this time off to do all of the interviews. 3 or 4 of them got 2 interviews. A couple got more than 2 interviews, and at the end of the day, it had to answer my question. And my questions were simple. For the fees that I'm going to pay them, will my agents be pre-sold so that they don't have to sell the trade name? Because I want them to spend their time. I want them to talk about the trade name. But while they might call the company, they're going to hire the agent. And I didn't want the name of the company to be a hindrance, right? So that had to happen. They had to have a business plan where the development of systems and tools well into the future would constantly go on, because I believe the industry changes constantly. So I needed to make sure that that would change constantly, right? And then from a broker standpoint, based upon the fees that have to be paid, is still profitability, because agents have to be profitable, companies have to be profitable, right? So if either one of us is not profitable, it's not going to work.
Right.
Right.
Sooner or later, things are going to explode, and I could tell you stories about brokerage companies that didn't have their fees in line to make a profit, that are out of business today, and they were really big.
Yep.
Right, because they weren't thinking of sustainability.
Right.
So there was only one company when I went through there that answered my punch list of education, technology development, name recognition, return on investment, right? And that happened to be Remax.
Did you
And I do that to this day every time the franchise comes up for renewal. Now, I don't take months off, right? But
Right.
I'll check 2 or 3 different entities out, right?
Okay.
To see whether or not it's still the right mousetrap for my agents, right? Because we all believe we have the best mousetrap, right? When I was at Century 21, I thought Century 21 was the best thing. I'm pretty sure if I would have talked to the people, the Bidoffs at Caldwell Banker, when the Bidoffs were alive and now the owners in Illinois, they think Caldwell Banker is the best thing, right? Same thing with Accent, Better Homes and Gardens, One Realty, etc. Right? We all think we have the best mousetrap. And for them, maybe it does. But for me, it's really simple. Do I have systems and tools I can give to the agents that are up to date? Can I do it in an affordable manner? And when they're in competition, and they will be in competition, will the name Remax be pre-sold?
Right.
Did you get to interview with Dave Lineker?
I did.
Oh,
I did.
Oh, wow.
I did. Yeah.
and Gail, was she there too?
Dave, well, Gail came for dinner.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So he got to interview the big guy, so to speak.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and by the way, Remax was probably the most expensive out of pocket I had several franchises that are in the Fox Valley right now offered to me free,
Oh, wow.
but they didn't hit my punch.
Yep.
And I hope you believe what I said. When I got into the businesses, money, 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 then I had to adjust. Boy, do I care about the people. And if I care, the money will come.
Well, I'll tell you, just from what I've seen from being here so far, and what's it been, like 6, 7 months, whatever, you blow me away with how much you care about your people here. Because even just like not even taking awards or anything, it's not about you, it's about your agents. And I think that is awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And I can say, from my perspective, the training has been
Yeah.
second to none. I mean, what better person to train you on contracts than the guy that helped make the contracts? It's been phenomenal.
Yep. So thank you, and you, for everything.
Well, those are kind words. And now we're going to have to work hard to keep it up.
Yeah.
And we will. I promise to you, we will.
Okay, good.
Those
Good.
expectations. Yep.
Although now the door has to be expanded to get my big head through it. But that's all right. Maybe I'll just spend the night here.
This isn't long enough for you.
Yeah.
Although that carpet's pretty comfortable.
Yeah,
It's
there you
very
go.
soft, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Casey and Carey, thank you so much for your time. And we really enjoyed our time here so far. And if there's one thing we could tell anybody, whether you're a buyer, you're a seller, or you're an agent, we think RE/MAX is the right option for you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
So do we.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.